this book. So in this chapter, all the bullet points which you see, these bullet points are as is from the book, because that is required to understand the linkage between one chapter to another chapter and one topic to another topic. That's why the bullet points and the material is also based on the PM, BA body of knowledge. So let's understand 2.1, which is planning for analysis approach, how to do that, conducting stakeholder analysis, planning analysis activities, analysis communication plan, planning requirement management processes, managing overall analysis performance. So these are the 6 different areas which are going to be covered as part of the planning and monitoring, which is chapter 2. Knowledge area. What is knowledge area? It defines the task associated with the planning and monitoring of business analysis activities. So as it says that the entire book is divided into different knowledge areas, and each knowledge area defines all the activities and the tasks which will be done as part of that process. So when we are talking about planning and monitoring in this chapter, we are going to discuss about all the activities and the tasks associated with planning and monitoring. For example, identifying stakeholder, defining roles and responsibilities of the stakeholder in the business analysis process, developing estimates for business analysis activities or tasks, planning how the business analyst will communicate with the stakeholder, planning how requirements will be approached, traced, and prioritized. Approached means how we are gathering it, how we are accepting the requirements. Traced, we are tracing it whether this is a right requirement or not. Then prioritized, we have 10 requirements, and out of that we need to prioritize that, okay, which are the requirements which are critical in nature. Those are the ones which is going to be in scope. Determining the deliverables that the business analyst will produce. Determining the deliverables that the business analyst will produce. So we are talking about a planning phase and the monitoring phase. That means all the deliverables needs to be pipelined to make sure we know what are the deliverables we are looking from the business analyst perspective, and also according to that we need to plan for their dates. Defining and determining business analysis processes. Business analysis processes encompasses everything, whatever deliverables business analyst is going to deliver. Determining the metrics that will be used for monitoring business analysis work. So when we say the metrics in terms of when we are talking about more from the monitoring perspective in the sense that, okay, there are some quality parameters set for the BRD, like, okay, BRD have X number of factors, then it will be considered as your quality wise the business analyst have delivered the good quality of business requirement document. So there are some metrics which we are going to read towards the end of this chapter to understand what are the different parameters which we need to understand from the metrics perspective. So this is more for this planning and monitoring knowledge area overview. Let's move on. This is the full-blown picture which a BA body of knowledge have provided. So on the left-hand side, as you see, this have the input. Every knowledge area have an input, process, output. Input, activity, output. Input, task, output. This all three things what I just said means the same. That means this is divided into 3 parts. All the knowledge area is divided into 3 parts. 3 part is, to perform any task, you must have some kind of an input. Once you have an input and you process that input, you are going to have some output. This is what the knowledge area is all about. As you see here, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, these are the tasks. Now, first understand the input. Your input is business analysis performance metrics. Business need, why we are doing that, which we are going to read in chapter 5. Enterprise architecture, business model, how the business is, we are going to address. Expert judgment, if there is a subject matter expert advice needed, we take it. Organizational process assets, any historical data, any historical template, anything which is coming from the knowledge-based perspective from the company, can be treated as an organizational process asset. So these are the inputs before we start working on these activities or the tasks. What are the activities? Plan, business analysis, approach. So all these activities we are going to read in detail. Let's understand the output. What is output? Once we take this input, process, perform these activities, then we have the output like business analysis approach. We get the approach, how to proceed. Then we have stakeholder list, roles, and responsibility. We get A to Z from the stakeholder perspective. Then we have business analysis plan, how we are planning to do the business analysis. Then we have communication plan ready for the BA. We have a performance assessment. We have a requirement management plan. And then we have a process asset. So all these things are as an outcome of processing these activities. That's what it is. So we take all this input, perform all these tasks, and then these are the final outcomes what we get. Now let's see one at a time in detail. Plan business analysis approach. What we see here is 2.1. This task describes how to select an approach to perform business analysis, which stakeholder needs to be involved in the decision. Who will be consulted regarding the informed of the approach and the rationale for using it. So it's talking about two things. Number one, how we are going, what will be the approach, how we are going to perform the business analysis. Number two, which are the stakeholders which are going to participate in the overall analysis process. 2.1.2 is the description. What is the description? See, this is a further breakdown of 2.1, what you see over here. This is the task. This is the further breakdown of business analysis approach. The description is analysis approaches describe the overall process that will be followed to perform business analysis work on a given initiative. Given initiative means that given project. How and when tasks will be performed, the techniques that will be used, and the deliverables that should be produced. So there are a few things over here. Let's understand that. So as it says here, overall process that will be followed to perform business analysis work on a given initiative, how and when task will be performed, the techniques that will be used, and the deliverables that should be performed. So these are this is the description, this is what you do as part of your business analysis approach. If no standard exists, the business analyst works with the appropriate stakeholder to determine how the work will be completed. The business analyst should be capable of selecting or creating an approach and working with the key stakeholder, particularly the project manager and the project team, to ensure that is suitable. So there could be the possibility this is the first project in the company, or maybe the company have no standards. That's a very big possibility, company having no standards. If that happens, then what you do? Then you proceed with your own IQ. You use your own IQ, how to work with the stakeholder, how to get the requirement, how to finalize the approach, and how to work with the key stakeholders to get the requirement. So these are the things you should learn by your own. The business analysis approach is often based on or related to the project approach, but in some cases they may be independently determined. For example, an organization may use a plan-driven approach to define its business processes and then use a change-driven approach to build the supporting software application. There are two keywords which are used. Number one is plan-driven approach, and another one is the change-driven approach. Just think about it. When we say plan-driven approach, that means think about waterfall model. where everything is planned ahead of the time. On the other hand, when we say change-driven approach, think about agile, where you are building something, reviewing it, and then enhancing it. Again, you are building it, reviewing it, then enhancing it. That means you do the enhancements unless you reach the final state of what you are looking for. That is your change-driven approach. That is, you are changing depending upon your requirement. On the other hand, plan-driven means you first plan before you deliver. These are the difference between these two types of approaches. So what overall, in a nutshell, what it says here, sometimes the organization may go for the plan-driven approach for the business processes, or it may opt the change-driven, where it will decide that whatever changes it is doing, according to that, it's going to decide whether they want to improve after doing the changes, or they just want to follow the hard timeline and the approach under plan-driven. Next slide is the continuation of business analysis approach. Now, as you see here, 2.1.3 is an input. And what are the inputs? You have a business need, expert judgment, organizational assets. Now, let's understand each one by one. When we say the business need, what exactly it means? It is generally necessary to consider the risk associated with it, the time frame in which the need must be addressed, and how well the need is understood. What it says, what it is trying to say, think about it. You have a $500 budget. Now, if you invest that $500 budget in something, you are going to start getting $1,000 in return. Okay, that is a good deal because you are investing $500 and you're getting a return of $1,000. On the other hand, if you are investing, let's say 500, and your return is 0, or your return may go into negative, then that's not a good approach. So what you do? Then the business need is not right. What you are trying to do is inappropriate. On the other hand, let's say there is some mandate or some other kind of requirement where you must do this. Now that's where comes something we call it as the I'm just thinking for the right word. Yeah, the cost-benefit analysis. Cost-benefit analysis in the sense that what will be the cost which will be incurred and what the benefit you are going to get. That is called as cost-benefit analysis. That has more to do with the project manager. Cost-benefit analysis is done by the project manager, so you don't have to worry about. But overall, in a nutshell, I'm trying to explain here. First, you need to understand the business need and the risk associated with that. Why is that? You need to do that because if, let's say, you started up with the project without understanding the risk associated with that, and when that risk happens, then there is an issue because what you planned for, it's nowhere close to it. You planned for 500, now you're investing $2,000. Then you have gone 3 times higher. So that's not a right, it's an inappropriate business need. So you need to always understand what time frame and what are the risks associated with any changes which we are talking about. Expert judgment. Why it is important, expert judgment? Because people over the time get an experience in any field and they understand the market ups and downs and they have seen it, they have experienced. That's why it is expert judgment. So if somebody has studied the financial market very well, they would know how the finance works. When there are crises, they can read through that. They can understand this, they can analyze the statistical data. So expert judgment plays a very big role. So expertise may be provided from a wide range of sources, including stakeholders in the initiative, organizational center of competency, consultants, or associations and industry groups. So the expert judgment can come from anywhere. Let's say, I'll tell you, KPMG is a taxing and auditing company. So anytime any company seek some kind of a help on the taxing purpose, they contact KPMG because they know that KPMG have a expertise in taxing and auditing. On the other hand, the expertise is something like a Davis Vision, then you have VSP, Vision Service Provider. These are the companies who are specialized in one particular form of claims. So anytime there is somebody looking for some expert decisions, they may contact them for the expert suggestions or the consultation perspective. So that's where your expert judgment comes into the picture. The next one is your organizational assets. As it states, the process assets that may be useful in defining the business analysis approach include methodologies for process change or software development, tools or techniques that are in use or understood by stakeholders. So all these things are example of organizational assets which belongs to organization, which can be utilized in any current project or the future project without any issues. So these are the three inputs which comes under planned business analysis approach. You always try to remember in CBAP, lot of questions are very direct that, okay, what are the inputs for business analysis approach? Then you need to call these three out. These are the three input for the business analysis approach. Organization, business need, expert judgment, and the organizational effort. Now this is the simplified form of the first document what we have reviewed. So as you see here, we have business need, expert judgment, organizational process asset, which is as an input. Then we have the activity which is planned business analysis approach as 2.1, and then that delivers the output which is the BA activities, planned BA activities, planned requirement management process. How to manage the requirement processes. On the other hand, it also provides the planning for the BA activities. What are the deliverables, what are the activities BA is going to perform and do. So this is the high level. Let's understand. Hold on. Okay. 2. For some reason I thought it is 2.4, but it's not. 2.1.4 elements. What are the elements? Almost all methodologies fit somewhere among a spectrum between plan-driven and change-driven approach. Okay, let's understand what is plan-driven. As I already explained, these approaches tend to be preferred in solutions where requirement can be effectively be defined in advance of implementation. The risk of an incorrect implementation is unacceptably high, or when managing stakeholder interaction present significant changes, the authority to approve requirements typically rests the selected stakeholders and the project sponsor. Waterfall of the software development and the business process re-engineering initiative are typical example of plan-driven approach. As I said earlier, why the plan-driven approach? You can go in the plan-driven approach only when, see here, the risk of the incorrect implementation is unacceptably high, or when managing stakeholder interaction presents significant challenges. So either there are multiple reasons what is listed over here. Either the changes which we are talking about can be very costly. If they are, that means we cannot go the change-driven approach. We need to take a plan-driven approach where we will first plan it and then move more. So it happens in the waterfall. On the other hand, you have a change-driven approach. What exactly it means? Change-driven approach means these approaches tend to be preferred when taking an extraordinary approach to find the best solution or for incremental improvement of an existing solution. Agile method of software development as well as continuous improvement projects are typical example of change-driven approaches. As I said earlier, Agile is a typical example of change-driven because you go in iterations, you go in cycles, plan, analyze, implement, and then you refine. So this is getting into circles, and that's what you are trying to do it, and trying to go in circle and upgrading the system or the process depending upon the need of the change, what changes, what additional requirement changes you have expected from the end user. So that's how your change-driven works. Moving on, under this, there are further, so when you have these elements, what are the other things you need to consider to decide whether you have to go plan-driven or whether you have to go change-driven? What are the factors you need to consider? As you see here, the performance of this task is dependent on where the selected approach falls on this spectrum. The description below touch on the ends of the spectrum, and hybrid approach may combine aspects of both. So when it says hybrid approach, what exactly means? It means that, okay, some of the things we are going to opt for the plan-driven, some of the place we are going to take a change-driven. That's what it is. That means it's a mix and merge. We are going to see which works best for the given scenario. Now, determine. Now, number one area is timing of business analysis work. What exactly it means? It means that determine when the business analysis effort should occur. When task needs to be performed, and if the level of business analysis effort will need to vary over time. All these things we need to analyze, all these things we need to understand. Moving on, in plan-driven, how do you handle? In change-driven, how do you handle? In plan-driven, what we do is, in plan-driven plan-driven approaches have most business analysis work occur at the beginning of the project or during one specific project phase. Yes, that's right, because you are planning something before you go and execute that. So your BRD phase have more and more aggressive way to capture the requirement. On the other hand, the exact name of the phase varies by the specific methodology, but the main focus of the phase includes such activity as elicitation. Elicitation is the next chapter which we are going to read. Eliciting, analyzing, documenting, verifying, and communicating the requirement, as well as reporting on the status of the business analysis activities work for the project. On the alternate side, on the other hand side, when it is a change-driven, this approaches may have a business analysis effort conducted early to produce an initial list of high-level requirements, also referred as the requirement envisioning. Requirement envisioning, try to have this. They may ask a question, what is requirement envisioning? So the definition is from here to here. So this is nothing but it's a analysis effort conducted early to produce an initial list of high-level requirements. That is also known as requirement envisioning. The product backlog is then updated throughout the project as new requirements emerge. Throughout the project, these requirements will be prioritized and reprioritized based on the business needs. So your list is building up. Your to-do list in the project, in the change-driven approach, is building up. How you are going to work? You are going to work. You are keep adding updating your to-do list. And once you have your to-do list, now it's time for you to prioritize. So if you have added 10 items in your to-do list, you need to prioritize to say which are the top 5 you have to start depending upon the priority of it. The highest priority requirement will be taken from the backlog for detailed requirement analysis as resource become available for the implementation. And implementation will begin as soon as analysis is complete. So out of 10, let's say if you finalize 5 as a requirement, then you are going to complete the requirement analysis for that particular first to-do item, and then going to assign the resource who will start working on that requirement before you get hands-on into the another prioritized requirement. Now, any question over here?
No.
Okay, let's move on. The next one is the formality and level of detail of business analysis deliverables. What exactly we do. As it says here that we are going to discuss more on this topic in chapter 4, which is requirement management and communication for example of business analysis deliverables. From the deliverable perspective, we will study in chapter 4. On a high level, let's understand what exactly we are doing. In the plan-driven approach, typically calls for a significant amount of formality and detail. Requirements are captured in a formal document or set of documents which follows standard templates. So when we are talking about this process, that means it's a formal. The document step is formal, and that's how we are going to proceed further with that. So when that is happening, that means you are going to use the standard document. You are not going to make use of anything just simply saying that, okay, I'm going and just using this template, using that template, like that. So you have to use a standard template. If somebody is working on the standard operating procedure, that means you need to go and you need to work it out with the standard operating standard document to make sure you are using the standard operating procedure. Now, if that is the case, then what you do? Then you are going to look into the organizational assets. If there is a template, if there is a process improvement department, you reach out to them, they will give you the template. So no matter which is the project, all the project must use the same template and fill out all the necessary information which is required in that template. So that is your plan driven. It's planned that you are going to use this particular formal document to capture the requirement. On the other hand, in change driven, the favor defining requirement through team interaction and through gathering feedback on a working solution. So the change driven approach is very informal. When we say informal, that means we are relying on more from the meeting perspective, team member or the stakeholder feedback perspective. So these are all informal things because maybe somebody just picks up the phone and gives you some requirements. That is informal. On the other hand, plan driven is more formal approach. This is exactly what the difference between these two. Now, the next bullet point is requirement prioritization. What exactly it means and what are we trying to gain out of it? Change-driven approaches tend to place a great deal of emphasis on effective requirement prioritization method. Due to the small scope of each iteration or release, which we are going to study in detail in the prioritization management in chapter 6. Chapter 5, enterprise analysis, we will study. Chapter 4, requirement management and communication. Chapter 7, we will study allocate requirements. So these are the areas where we are going to, so these are the chapters which are the high level chapters which we are studying right now. But then we have full-blown chapters for each and every area. So like for requirement prioritization, how to do it, how to decide which is the high priority requirement, all these things we are going to study in chapter 5, 6, and 7. 4, 5, 6, 7. In different acts, we are going to study all these requirement prioritization. Change management. Okay. When we say change management, That means how are we planning to do the change management? Changes to the requirements may occur at any time. Yes, the changes can come anytime. Plan-driven and change-driven. When you have a plan-driven approaches seek to ensure that changes only occur when they are genuinely necessary and can be clearly justified. The change management process, again, you have two ways. Either you go plan-driven or you go change-driven. If you are going plan-driven, that means you must have all the supporting facts that if you are going for this change, why you need this change. What exactly is the need for this change? Is there a genuine reason, or you are just, is it something must have, or is it something nice to have? That distinction is very much important. On the other hand, when it is a change-driven approach, generally no separate change management process. There is no distinct change management process because we have taken the change-driven approach, and as part of that approach, we know there will be multiple iterations for any requirement before it gets finalized. The changes to existing solution capabilities are simply prioritized and selected for an iteration using the same criteria as a new features and capabilities. So in change-driven, since the change-driven approach is agile, where the iterations are allowed for any specific requirement, then what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are capturing all the requirements, and in agile there is no separate change management process. There is no separate change control board. Whatever you do it based on whatever outcome of the iteration, whatever is the recommendation from the review of the iteration. Iteration review, whenever you are doing iteration review, is nothing but iteration means repetition. Okay. So if that BRD was reviewed 3 times, that means you had 3 iterations. You will get some requirement changes in first iteration, another requirement in second iteration, third requirement in third iteration. When you are doing that, that means that's how you are going to capture all the changes. There is no separate body sitting to control the changes which are going to happen in the project. Business analysis planning process. This analyst must determine the process that will be followed to plan the execution of business analysis activities. What it says, it says a big sentence. It says must determine the process that will be followed to plan the execution of business analysis. So the catch over here is this one. So what is the planning process? A planning process is nothing but the process where we have a plan how to execute all the business analysis activities. That is something like you can say that, okay, how to set up the meeting, how to do the user acceptance testing. These are all comes as the business analysis activities. All these things are business analysis activities. In most cases, this process will be interchanged into a larger project plan. So let's say you have a business requirement document, you have a system, you have a technical requirement document or the functional requirement document. What are the things needs to be there? How you are going to, which server you are going to use, what kind of a requirement you have created. All these things are part of your business analysis planning process. So this all comes down to the planning process. Communication with stakeholders. When we say communication with stakeholders, we must understand whether we are trying to do the formal or informal communication. Both have its own importance. You keep bugging somebody with the formal email, they will get annoyed, and maybe they were willing to help you out, but now they stopped. So there is a need for just by sending an email your job is done. No, that's not the case. You need to make sure you get what you are looking for, that then your job is done. That's what the business analysis means. So requirement analysis and communication with stakeholders. Communication may be written or verbal, formal or informal. Decisions must be made at the outset of the project as to the ability of such communication technologies, such as email, with regards to project decision making and approval of deliverables. So again, you have two approaches. Either you can go plan driven or you can go change driven. If you go plan driven, then what? If you go change driven, then what? If you go plan driven, what exactly it means? It tends on formal communication method. Much of the communication is actual requirement is in writing and often uses predefined forms requiring signatory approval. All project documentation is normally archived as part of the project history. So in plan driven, as it says, that means plan. Everything is predetermined. Everything is already set. What you are doing is you are just filling out the form. That's how you write the requirement. When we are talking about the change driven, that means it's a hit and try. Okay, you tried 1 spoon of sugar. Oh, it's little less. You added half spoon more. Oh, this is too much. Okay, you reduced it to 1 and 1/4 of the sugar. So this is hit and try. Change driven is just hit and try. That's how you work. So this approach focuses more on frequency of communication than on formal documentation. Official documentation is often in writing, but informal communication takes precedence over more formal written communication. So what it says, informal communication takes precedence over formal written communication. So that means in this particular case, you are relying more from the informal data, not from the formal communication perspective. That means whatever you are doing is informal. You are setting up the meeting, you are giving the requirements. These are all informal details. You are not capturing the meeting minutes. These are all informal, that you are accepting, you are taking it for granted to say that, okay, whatever requirement you have captured, people are going to stick to that. So that's more informal because you know you are going to take the changes as part of the requirement. Documentation frequency occurs following implementation. Number 7, requirement analysis and management tools. What exactly it means? Analysis we understood. What are the management tools? So analysts must identify any requirement analysis or management tools that will be used. These tools may shape the selection of business analysis technique, notations to be used, and the way the requirements will be packaged. So it's talking about that, okay, how you want to gather the requirement. Okay, what tool are you going to use? That is going to decide that, okay, what kind of a technique. When we say that business analysis methodologies, then we are talking about the PESTLE and all these things. So we must understand that tools may shape up the selection of business analysis technique. That means it is trying to say that you need to get a buying also over here. That's what the management tool is going to do. Management tool, you are going to use some specific notation to explain the need of the project, why you want to do that project, why you are analyzing it. Project complexity. The complexity of the project, the nature of the deliverables, and the overall risk to the business needs to be taken into consideration. The factors listed below, among others, increase the complexity of business analysis effort as they increase. What are the things part of it? Number of stakeholders. So see, the project complexity is very important to understand. And why is that? Because that's how you are going to assess the risk of the project. So if you, what are the factors which can add up to the project complexity? Number of stakeholders, number of business areas affected, number of business systems affected, amount and nature of risk, uniqueness of the requirement, number of technical resource required. Now think about it. You have a claim engine, you have a stakeholder like there are 5 stakeholders, and all 5 belongs to all 5 different business area, like provider, member, provider contract separate, claims separate, payments separate. So these are all the different business area you have. Then you have a system. Payment system have its own system. Then claim have 3 different systems, QNext, Facets, and NASCO. These are the 3 different systems you have. Then you have, let me think. Okay, the nature of risk. When I say the nature of risk, that means when you have so many stakeholders, that means your risk factor will be high because you have so many areas which are impacted, and according to that your project can have an impact. So claims can have its own impact, member can have its own impact, provider can have its own impact. So it depends. The number of areas impacted, the more and more complexity the project will get. And why is that? Because the more and more risk you may incur. Now, uniqueness of the requirement. So if the requirement is so unique in nature where you are not able to, it was never developed before, something similar to it, that means it's a unique in nature. That means it's very hard to assess the risk because there is no historical data available. Number of technical resources needed. Whenever you have more and more resources needed for the project, that means more and more complexity we are talking about, because more minds, more confusion, more problems, and more conflicts to resolve. So all these things adds up to your project complexity. So let's see. Okay, let me quickly check the time. Okay. We'll conclude for here, and next class we'll start with the techniques. Any questions?